Obedience is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires us to have. We are required to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His commands. And no doubt Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and the prophets that came after and before him and the people that came after and before him were no different. We are required to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the same verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls Ibrahim ummah, He also calls Ibrahim by another word, Qanit. Inna Ibrahim kana ummatan qanitan lillah. Qanit, literally, it means one who obeys, but it also has a really deeper meaning to that. The word Qanit, my respected friends, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses it in the Quran when making reference to those who worship Him in salah. Allah says in Surah Baqarah, وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. Stand in prayer obediently or with focus. Qanit here, it's translated to focus. Obedience and focus, at times, they're obviously two different words, but how do they relate to the root of qanata or qunut? Ibn Mandur rahmatullahi alayhi in his Lisan al-Arab, he says the word qanat, literally it means imsak anil kalam. It means to stay away and to not speak. It means to stay silent. Meaning when a person is in salah, they stay silent. They do not talk. And similarly, when it comes to obedience, a person is a qanit is when they obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without questioning that command. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he is called Qanit because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the command to obey Him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to do certain things, he did not speak, he did not question Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command. He obeyed immediately without speaking. When Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam reached the age of about 13 years old, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam sees a dream. And the dreams of prophets, they are considered revelation. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam sees a dream where he is instructed to slaughter his son. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, what does he do? He speaks to his son. He says, فَانظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. What do you think? What do you see? And his son Ismail, he replies, he says, قَالَ يَا أَبَتِ إِفْعَلْ مَا تُؤْمَرْ. Do what you are commanded. No hesitation. The notion of obedience while staying silent and not questioning Allah's command was also found in his son Ismail. But in this essence, it was also found in Ibrahim. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam did not stutter or hesitate when it came to this command of Allah to slaughter his son. When he asked his son, what do you think? The reason he asked his son this wasn't to gain sympathy or to gain something, a question of rebuke or a question of rejection from his son. Rather, Imam Qurtubi rahmatullahi alayhi, he says, إِنَّمَا يُشَاوِرُهُ لِيُعْلَمْ أو لِيَعْلَمَ صَبْرَهُ لِأَمْرِ اللَّهِ. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he asked this question to his son, or he sought mashwara, to seek counsel with his son so that he can see how patient his son is for the command of Allah. To see how patient he was and ready he was to oblige and obey what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded. أو لتقر عينه إذا رأى من ابنه طاعة في أمر الله. Or another possibility was that Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam wanted to gain coolness in his eyes from seeing how obedient and ready his son was to obey what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, the command came to slaughter his son. He went, he picked up the knife, the narration mentions, he puts the knife to the throat of his son, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stops him in that moment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stops him in that moment and replaces his son with a ram from the heavens. But Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam's obedience was at its epitome. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam obeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without questioning His wisdom. And this is why he was also known as Qanit, the one who obeys without thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command. The one who obeys without speaking. The one who obeys while staying silent. fully trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's divine wisdom and fully trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's divine plan. Obedience, my respected friends, is a very important aspect of our faith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, whoever obeys His messenger, they have indeed become successful, and they will be successful. We are instructed and commanded to obey Allah. We are instructed and commanded to obey His messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now, obedience has levels, and one aspect of obedience is when the command comes, there's no questions asked. It's from Allah, we will oblige. It's from His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we will oblige. And this is what Qanit means, to oblige and obey while staying silent and fully trusting in the one who has given the command.